If this is your first time using Dundas BI, this video is for you. Every visualization on a dashboard is powered by something called a metric set, and knowing how to create one is one of the most important first steps in knowing how to use Dundas BI. Understanding metric sets is the same as knowing whether you should be putting pineapple on your pizza. You've just got to figure this stuff out. I'm Jeff, and this is Off the Charts with Jeff. Let's start with an analogy for what a metric set is. If you were trying to explain to someone what a CPU is, you might suggest that it's like the brains of the computer. Or you might say that an engine is like the core of a car, or the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. Or you might say something like the heart is the heart of the body. The same is true for the relationship between the metric set and the visualization. The metric set is something that lets you choose the structure, combine, manipulate that data that you want to analyze. For those of you who know databases, you might even think of it as a visual data query. Let's look first at where you can build a metric set. And it would really help if you understood that metric sets can be constructed in two different places, depending on your goal. You'll see on the Explore panel on the right that there's a folder where you can build and save pre-built metric sets. You can use this metric set designer from here and create and store a library of metric sets to give to your users. A metric set library is excellent for reuse and will even allow users to build their own simple dashboards based on your pre-built metric sets if you want to enable a degree of self-service for them. You can also create metric sets right on the dashboard if you don't care about reusing them, and this will also help streamline your development process by helping you stay in one place. Whether you create them in the metric set designer or right on the dashboard, the build process is the same. And in the case of the dashboards, your metric sets will actually appear under the dashboard object instead of in the metric set folder, since they were created inline. You can even promote these later to a full metric set if you later decide that reuse is important. The main interface that you need to learn behind the metric set is the data analysis panel. As I said previously, this interface is for creating the structure of the data and is not the visualization itself. I'll show you what I mean. Here's an example metric set. Notice how I can go to the Revisualize option at the top of the screen, and I can choose which data visualization I want to use to represent this data. I can keep changing it as my analysis needs change, and there are a few things at play here. So let me break this down visually. First, the metric set allows you to select the data that you want to use, applying aggregation, grouping, filtering, formulas, and much more. We can get into that later. It also will intelligently choose a data visualization control for you, or you can set it to something. Notice that there's a visualization tab in the data analysis panel. This part allows you to tell the metric set what to do with the data based on the type of visualization control that you selected. For example, it will control what data will determine the bar height, the tooltips, the axes labels, and many more if you were using a bar chart. In most cases, the data visualization will automatically bind to the visualization control that you use. So you don't really have to worry about this, but having this control opens up a ton of potential for advanced customization. So you should at least be aware that it exists. Finally, once you have the data selected and attached to the visualization control, you have properties here on the right-hand side that deal with the actual settings of the visualization itself. These properties allow you to customize things like appearance, text, layout, and knowing these three places and their purposes will help you better navigate where to go and give you a better chance of finding the things you want to change. So please take a minute to think about this, as it will really help you know where to look for the settings that you want. Now to recap, you've got the metric set, your visualization, then the actual visualization control, and its associated visualization properties. All of these together give you a fully customizable data visualization without any limits. It's actually pretty awesome how much control you have. I want to do one more thing before I wrap this up, and that's show you the different data drop points in the metric set and what they mean. Using the magic of post-production, I'm going to show you what happens with a few different visualization types so that you can see what's going on as we do it. To do this, I'm going to add 4 visualizations to the dashboard, and I'm going to use the exact same metric set for each. And I'm going to show you also the raw data so you can see what I'm working with, and the actual values appearing in the metric set. So to start, we have our measures, and measures are really just the numbers that you want to support. On the chart, you'll see that this gives us a single data point in a single series. On a table, similar, but gives us a single cell. Now for the map, a single number doesn't mean anything, so it's completely blank for now. And the gauge is kind of opposite to the map. It only supports a single data point, so that's being represented by the pointer. Now let's add another field to our metric set. By adding continent, you can see that the data will automatically be grouped by this field. The bar chart gets axes labels and is split up based on our groups, and the table now has rows for each new member. The map also now understands that we want to see continent grouping and gives us a visual. Now the gauge doesn't understand multiple data grouping, so it simply takes the first value in the metric set and uses it as the pointer. Now on to the slicer. You'll see that nothing visually happens when we add data to the slicer field. No visual change occurs because the slicer is like a silent filter. And basically everything we add here is now filterable by these elements. The only time you're going to see a visual change here is if we actually do some filtering. Now filtering is a more extensive subject and I won't cover it now, but at least you can see why the slicer field exists. Finally, there's the columns. I like to think of these as using the term splitter as it applies to your visualizations. With the chart, you can see that adding something to the columns splits the series by what's in the columns. For the table, you can see that it's splitting the columns in half. The map and the gauge don't really take advantage of this by default, so nothing happens to them. Now I'd recommend you find a simple data set like the one that I'm showing you and get familiar with these. If you can get to the point where you can predict what's going to be displayed before you actually drag something into the metric set, you're in an excellent place to start building your own metrics, and is really worth the time from an investment standpoint. Also, I alluded to earlier that there's a lot more here to explore, such as aggregation, sorting, filtering, top, bottom, etc. If you're keen to keep learning, I'd recommend watching my video on aggregators called Here's Everything You Need to Know About Aggregators. Also, I'd recommend watching another video called Parameters Demystified, as it's another critical area for you to understand if you want to be proficient as a dashboard designer. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.